Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Man, it's finally nice that we actually got a cool down week after 2 weeks that were admittedly really hard to manage. A lot's been going on in my personal life, guys. It's been a lot to really handle. Not going to go into too much personal details about that, obviously, but you know, there's a reason why the last two episodes have been a bit later than expected. A lot's been going on, and given that the debuts this week are mostly confined to, well, hot dance and dance sales, with Dance Airplay in particular having a new change that's going to be absolutely important moving forward. Yeah, I'm not going to complain about a calmer week. I definitely can't complain, especially when the music's actually not that bad. But anyways, moving on from that, let's go to our top 10 where No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe is just continuing to stick at number one really damn well. The radio is fully on board in a big way with this one. Streaming is continuing to go up, and given how catchy the song is, I'm not exactly surprised by that. Honestly, I'm just glad that it's actually being a considerable hit now. But come on, can we please just get something to come through and knock down Miles on It by Marshmello and Kane Brown from number 2? It's goddamn summer, the season that dance music thrives at its best. The fact that we haven't got anything to really challenge at this point is really goddamn disappointing. I would not mind if it actually came along. Hell, I thought that would have been the case with the Day's Notion remix by Crystal at number 3. I mean, the sound of it certainly fits this season, but considering that Polydor is incompetent as fuck in promoting anyone, let alone new names, I expect her to be a big one-hit wonder on the Hot 100 with nothing to really follow up. That's a goddamn shame. She's actually really talented. But what surprised me was Victory Lap by Fred against Skepta and Pluckboy Max actually holding a number 4. Now obviously this did lose some stream momentum off the back of the EP boost not really lasting, and as expected London did not last on the chart either, so this wasn't really all that surprising. But the fact that the remixes and the original track are holding up so goddamn well at the moment, it's really telling, and of course radio's not touching it. Just lovely. But what's more important to note is that we actually had a top 5 debut that did not remotely surprise me, and while I don't expect it will stick around much longer considering the streaming is stalling out fast, I'm at least happy that it's here. Ocean by Calvin Harris and Jessie Reyez at number 5. Now obviously, again, this is not going to last long. The numbers after the first week have not been really all that great. It's probably going to end up falling pretty hard next week, but honestly the fact that this debuted as high as it did with the amount of streams that it did have, it's really telling that this 90s house pivot is working for Calvin Harris, and when the songs are consistently great, which yes, surprisingly this is absolutely great, yeah, I'm not about to complain about this being here. Really nice to see it. But considering that John Summit is likely to debut really damn big next week alongside Illenium, these might actually hold back Blessings by Calvin Harris featuring Clementine Douglas at number 6 where it currently is. Although the falling radio and the lack of real streaming support at this point, it doesn't really surprise me. Then there's the long overdue knock for Paso Bem Solto by Atlas down to number 7. Hopefully these two big debuts will knock it down even further next week. It's not good and I really am disappointed that it's lasted nearly a half a year at this point. I mean, it's not like it's already in danger of Make Me Feel by Oscar Medkay at number 8, which is probably going to get a big boost in the next couple of weeks thanks to the remix with Khalid, which unfortunately is not as good. Although the song itself is doing really goddamn well in its original form, so I expect it will stick around regardless. Great to see. And more disappointing is that unfortunately beneath it we had a song rise up that's not remotely worth keeping around. Blackout Days Stay Away by Ian Asher and Fantagram at number 9. And considering that another one of his remixes is blowing up, yeah, we might have 3 charting songs from this guy at once. As if we needed Cyril but worse in 2025. Come on, why are we doing this? And finally, what will probably end up being booted off really damn hard next week, Slow Motion by Marshmello and the Jonas Brothers at number 10. Streaming has collapsed, sales are no longer a thing, and radio was never on board to begin with, and considering the 2 big debuts above it, if this sticks around, something has gone very clearly wrong here. But what I think is more telling is that outside the top 10, we didn't have any notable dropouts outside of maybe Helium by the Chainsmokers and Anna Sophia, which didn't even perform all that well to begin with. It's probably going to miss the year-end list or at least be close to it. And our only 2 notable falls came for Say My Name remix by Morgan Seatree featuring Florence and the Machine at 22, and Accelerata by Smasher and Mozzie down to 17, right where it was on its debut week. I think that's really telling that people are not on board with this guy, and considering his discography and the song's really awful quality, I'm not about to complain there. But if you thought we were done with Brazilian funk, well, Number 24, Montagem Supersonic by KHAOS and Jmilton. I shouldn't even be fucking surprised by this anymore. This scene has already shat on Majora's Mask in The Legend of Zelda by including Majora in that awful song Montagem Zonada, so why not ruin this even more for me by stooping down so low and using my favourite video game mascot as a punchline for your awful and underdeveloped crap. And of course on top of that, this shit's all over the concept of Brazilian funk music by making the song focused around hardstyle kicks and an awfully compressed mix that not only bricks out every single element and makes it sound borderline unlistenable, but somehow is even worse than Jmilton's last shining song, Vem Vem. I mean, at least it's memorable in terms of its awfulness, but yeah, this might be one of the worst ones I've heard, and considering how bad this scene is, that's really saying something. Fuck this. This is trash. Skip it. Number 14, Spaces by BUNT, the Chainsmokers, and Izzy Bizu.
Baby, I'm still alive. Think I'll lose my mind. When I open my eyes, think I'll lose my mind. Baby, I'm still alive.
I mean, the fact that BUNT has continued to stick around this long after his rebrand and Clouds being the sort of massive hit in 2023 that absolutely was welcome that year, yeah, genuinely surprising to me, especially with the material being pretty damn consistently successful in both industry support and general streaming numbers. Hell, he's likely to debut a song on Dance Airplay as early as next week to fill in for Best Day of My Life, kind of underperforming there, and of course he's got this, which I didn't really expect much out of it, considering that the Chainsmokers don't really do this sort of stutter house sound all that often. Although I did like No Shade of Pity a lot more than I expected in retrospect, and yeah, this actually really worked for me as well. I don't know what's going on with them this year, but they've delivered yet again. I mean, it's more in line with BUNT's more atmospheric and melancholic side of stutter house, with some really stunning ambient synths against the much more defined piano melody. And hell, there's no percussion for the first 40 seconds of the track. It's mainly focused around the vocals of Izzy Bizu, who's actually given a lot more room to breathe, and thankfully, unlike her collab with David Guetta and Kungs, this actually gives her space to sound good. She's not covered in vocal effects either, which means her organic and natural charisma really does shine through. She sounds fantastic here. And when the drops go for that sort of bombastic festival house sound that Swedish House Mafia touched upon on their most recent singles, with the sort of synth line that reminds me a lot of the one on A New Day by Sebastian Ingrosso, which is absolutely a good thing, yeah, I was really on board with this. Again, the Chainsmokers have been proving that they can actually really make some consistently good music if they just focus on what they like instead of playing to the mainstream. And considering how decently high this debuted and the fact that it's actually got decent streams as of now, yeah, I wouldn't mind this sticking around. Really damn good song, really welcome surprise there. Number 5, Ocean by Calvin Harris and Jessie Reyez.
Ocean, love the way you lay me down and break me open.
And on the topic of things that are absolutely worth hearing, well, in this case, I was actually genuinely surprised that this turned out the way it did, considering that while I don't mind the collaborations between Calvin Harris and Jessie Reyez, I also don't love them either. Hard to Love is still easily my least favourite song on Funkwave Bounces Volume 1. It is what it is. And considering Jessie Reyez's solo material has not been all that good, where she's in a similar camp to that of Jessie Murph, but at least has some genuine talent and actually can sing in her higher register, I really wish she did more of that back in her peak, but she unfortunately hasn't. Yeah, it didn't give me the sort of interest to really check out new material until now, with this charting as high as it has. And if you want proof that she can actually be a genuinely great vocalist, it's this, because this is fucking excellent. I was surprised how well this turned out. One of Jessie Reyez's more underrated strengths is when she goes for a much more melancholic vocal delivery in her upper register, where under the right sort of control, she sounds goddamn gorgeous, and on a mix this lush and filled with so much room for her to actually sing, she sounds absolutely fantastic. I was shocked how well she worked here. And when you build up those huge sounding synths against the guitars that just really create that summer-ready vibe, and a progression that really gets emphasized by the final drop, where those acidic synths come in and just reinforce the 95 that this is going for, with the sort of lonely atmosphere that such an ocean would portray. Yeah, this is incredible production. I was honestly really shocked how well this all came together for me. So yeah, between this and Blessings, I am fully on board with Calvin Harris going back to 90s sounding house music, and considering the parallels that I can have between this and 90s era BT in terms of the sound, yeah, that's a huge compliment. This is fantastic. I really hope it sticks around. And coming off of that, yeah, let's just blow through the small charts because dance pop had absolutely nothing to talk about. I mean, seriously, the only notable story was the Dead Dance by Lady Gaga surging up to number 3, which we all predicted considering it got a full tracking week, and literally no other song fell more than 2 spots this week. There is nothing to talk about, so yeah, let's move on. And unfortunately, dance streaming had the exact lack of interest that I expected, with, of course, How It's Done being number 1 on both this and dance pop, which is not surprising in the slightest, with the Dead Dance debuting here at number 3, with nothing else again moving more than 2 spots. This is a serious goddamn problem. Thankfully, on dance sales, we at least had some interesting stories. I mean, the Dead Dance by Lady Gaga did hold at number 1 as expected. It's got a full week. It's probably going to stick at the top for a good bit. And how Lady Gaga had a decent week here too, with Abracadabra jumping up to number 4. Again, that was going to benefit off of the new single. But what's more surprising is As Alive As You Need Me To Be by 9 Inch Nails returning at 14, where it seems that thanks to the movie alongside the music video and some alt Airplay support, it's actually sticking around and somehow lasting on dance pop a lot longer than I expected. I would not mind it sticking around here too. It's a great track. But thankfully, there were at least some debuts here that were worth talking about, beginning with number 13, Space Pump Space Jam by Vinter.
Work that body, make sure you don't hurt nobody. Get wild and lose your mind. Take this thing into overtime. Hey DJ, Jim CD gon' burn it up. Come on y'all, get on the road. So hey, let's go.
Another week, another tech house cover that gets a little bit of Beatport support and actually manages to debut pretty damn low on dance sales. This particular one being released on Nervous Records, where The Less I Know The Better by Mal P came from, and that label has not been all that good this year. And with this being a remix from a Brazilian producer of the song Space Jam by Quad City DJs, the fact that it actually turned out okay is really the surprising part here. Kind of gives me similar weirder tech house vibes to that of Sip and Yak by Clooney, with the focus on the vocal samples over any sort of melody, with bass and not really much in the way of synth flourishes to really add to this mix, but having the sort of low-end groove that actually turned out surprisingly okay against the sample here, even if it's obviously nowhere near the original in quality. That being said, I actually get why this got dance sales support. It's not bad in terms of production, and it's actually nice to have a Brazilian producer making something other than funk or funk at this point. And while it's not exactly all that memorable, it's the sort of thing that doesn't really surprise me that it's confined to dance sales. It doesn't really stand out that much. Honestly, I would still take this over The Less I Know The Better by Mal P if we're talking Nervous Records this year. This could have turned out far worse. It's fine, I guess. Number 12, Loser by Tame and Impala.
It's now or never.
Here is once again where Billboard proves that they've learnt absolutely nothing in the numerous cycles of backlash they've gotten for not really being consistent with dance music. Because in this case, this debuted higher on Bubbling Under than End of Summer did, and had no presence on dance pop at all. I mean, seriously, this is getting goddamn ridiculous. At this point, Billboard really needs to overthrow their entire dance division if they're going to continue to be this inconsistent and frustrating. But yeah, the second single for the upcoming album, and I really have grown to love End of Summer, so I was at least looking forward to this, and unfortunately it's a bit more of a pivot back to what's expected from Tame Impala. More of a slower psychedelic indie leaning track with the focus on those really wavy synths that don't really sound all that great against the guitars. I really wish that this mix was a lot less hazy than what it is. And with the progression not feeling as big as it should, and the content of this track feeling really self-deprecating in the reference to Beck's track of the same name, which is absolutely better than this, this, but at least Kevin Parker can sell it well, and I can get why this would work for a lot of people. The atmosphere is going for more of this drunk stupor that I absolutely understand for this sort of content. It's meant to sound the way it is, even if it's not really for me, especially when it's clear that this is a song about the desire to end a relationship on emotionally composed and really consistent notes. But considering that Kevin Parker's mental state has just gone downhill over the course of this particular relationship, it doesn't surprise me that it ended up the way it did. Relationships sadly end up like this on many occasions. I can absolutely relate there. I mean, just a shame the production's not hitting as well as it should for me, and the content does get a little bit sour, because I would have liked this otherwise, but as it is, it's fine, but End of Summer hit a lot more for me. That's all. Number 7, Fancy Shit by Sid and Taylr Renee.
I like money, fancy shit. Buy me stuff, I know you rich.
Okay, so this one actually caught my curiosity for a bit, and no, it's not because of Sid at all, even if he has shown some considerable improvements since his really bad breakthrough on Hot Dance with Loud Luxury in 2020. No, it's because of Taylr Renee, a California-based singer who has actually appeared on some genuinely incredible and surprisingly big electro house songs in the mid-2010s, with both Left Behind with Paris Bloom and most notably Howl at the Moon with Stadium X, the latter of which was my favorite global dance hit of 2014 if you saw that video, and unsurprisingly I was really excited to see her back here, even if this was another song released on Catch and Release, and yeah, I really wish they used Taylr Renee a lot more here. I mean, she goes for this sort of trashier speak-sing delivery against a much heavier tech house groove that doesn't really have a ton going on in terms of progression. Although I did like those slightly grainy textures around the drops, they at least give this a lot more menace than I expected, especially when you have such vapid content that Taylr Renee is spewing out. I can absolutely understand the audience and the place where this would work, but sadly outside of a cool switch to some 80s sounding synth pop drums at one point throughout the track before the final drop, otherwise this feels really stock, and really you could have used Taylr Renee a lot more here. It's not bad by any means, and again I've heard worse from Catch and Release. This is fine for what it is, but really you are not going to make me memorize this at any point. It's forgettable as anything. I would honestly pass on it. It's not great. But now that leaves us with Dance Airplay, and things are going to change moving forward because especially on this week it's proving that Billboard is intensely frustrating to follow with this format, and at this point I'm going to move over to Mediabase's Dance Airplay Top 50. Now in the aftermath of the horribly misguided split and Billboard continuing to prove that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing with dance music at this point, I mean seriously, at this point it's just getting absolutely frustrating as someone who's been following the charts for years now. Dance Mix Show Airplay was arguably the only area that really kept my interest in the same way as it did back in the day, especially considering that they didn't tamper with the 40-song format at all, much to everyone's benefit here. But one element that absolutely was going to screw over this chart long term for me was the inclusion of Mix Show Airplay, where Billboard decided to count support for songs that aren't even dance at all being played in mix shows on non-dance radio stations, which again proves that they can't consistently stick to a genre to save their lives, especially in dance music. Now in theory I would absolutely get why Billboard would do this, considering that these songs are much higher in notoriety and would draw a lot more attention to this chart than just having the dance songs on their own. But as someone who has had an immensely frustrated relationship with the charts, especially this year, and considering that the mainstream pop music that's getting popular right now is often absolutely tedious and fucking terrible, 2025 has been a really bad year for the Hot 100. And with this week being the worst possible example of how Mix Show can be absolutely silent, as we had 0 debuts and 4 Mix Show backed songs returning at once, yeah, I'm putting my foot down, especially considering it's clear that Billboard's disconnect with Mediabase has been fucking galling. I mean seriously, there's a song on the top 10 of Mediabase right now that is not even passing number 16 on Dance Mix Show Airplay despite being a strong as hell contender, and there are other songs around the 25 to 35 range that would usually debut on Dance Mix Show Airplay as of now, but considering that Billboard wants to spend more time platforming another K-pop Demon Hunters track, yeah, this is where I stopped supporting them on this particular format. So yeah, from now on, I will be moving to Mediabase's top 50 chart that they publish every single week, which is entirely focused around dance music, with only very little pop crossover outside of songs that actually are dance related. And yeah, this is something I wish I did a long time ago, but considering that I was going to give Billboard the benefit of the doubt, considering how strong the dance side of that particular chart was this year, nowadays it's just getting ridiculous. And considering that a lot of the songs on this particular chart line up with what I would usually cover otherwise, and actually show some genuinely interesting stuff to talk about, yeah, I feel like this is long overdue. Now, with that in mind, I'm not completely blind to the idea of covering songs that chart specifically on Dance Mix Show Airplay, but in a similar vein to Mark from Spectrum Pulse's rules regarding album bombs, the coverage will be as follows. I'll briefly go over the songs that debuted on Dance Mix Show Airplay in a similar way to covering songs that I've already covered on this particular show in the past. However, if they fall under best or worst category for the week, which is pretty hard considering that a lot of the songs that are pop crossovers I'm more ambivalent on, I will give them their own dedicated review segments. I feel that that's fair, especially considering that this particular part of the show has been around since the split and has shown some pretty consistently interesting stuff. I think that's fair for the sake of consistency, if nothing else. So with that in mind, let's move over to the media-based Dance Airplay Top 10, where unfortunately Are You Down by Loud Luxury stuck at number 1. Although this one I really don't expect will stick at the top, considering that it's got a remarkably low number of spins for a song that's at number 1 right now, as the charts have surprisingly recalibrated and have felt more balanced across the lower songs on here. That's really interesting to note, and I can't complain either, the song is crap. And hell, the number 2 belongs to Loosen Up by Hugo and Doughty featuring Preston Harris, which I would have expected would actually get to number 1, but there's some songs beneath it that are making a serious run to knock it off of that top spot, and I'm not about to complain either. But then there's the interesting case of Save My Love by Marshmello, Ellie Goulding and Avion at number 3, which unsurprisingly did not really have much staying power at all after peaking at number 1, and considering that it's actually doing a lot better than I think anyone expected for a collab that's underperformed on the main dance charts, I'm not about to complain about it sticking around here either. But then there's No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe at number 4, which unsurprisingly isn't falling hard at all. This is what happens when you have an actual mainstream pop crossover that's getting support on pop airplay. Dance Airplay likes to follow suit and give it a lot more plays than they otherwise would, and considering that the song is the biggest dance song in the world right now, or at least very likely to be so, especially with it being number 1 on Hot Dance, I'm not surprised that it's not falling at all here. I wouldn't expect it to really have much in the way of falls in the next couple of weeks either. But what's likely to make a surprising run to number 1 is Wait So Long by Swedish House Mafia, which actually is surging past number 5 at the moment with the sort of massive upwards momentum where this could actually be their first number 1 since Don't You Worry Child in 2013. That's insane to me. Then following that is The Natural Loss for Dior by MK featuring Crystal down to number 6. Again, it's proof that Polydor pushed this way too late into its run, and considering that the Days is not getting any sort of support off of this, they're continuing to fumble the bag even on Dance Airplay. Come on. But as mentioned earlier, and one of the most baffling gaps between Billboard and Mediabase, Dream a Little Dream by Armin van Buuren and Sam Gray at number 7. Thank God that Mediabase actually knows how well this is doing on Dance Airplay, because this being outside the top 15 on Dance Mix Show Airplay by Billboard is just ridiculous, and I can't complain about it doing well here. It's a great track. Certainly more welcome in the top 10 than Move a Little Closer by Dubs and Abby Flynn at number 8, which thankfully seems to be stalling out early and will probably end up being kicked out soon. I'm not about to complain about that, as you probably could tell. And finally following that, our last 2 songs are songs that were amongst a surprisingly rare amount of tracks that actually saw a positive jump this week, with both of them being amongst only 5 or 6 that are actually jumping in the top half of the charts right now, which is again really telling of the recalibration and the balance between all the songs at the moment. I'm not about to complain either. But anyways, Waterfalls by James Hype featuring Sam Harper and Bobby Harvey finally hit the top 10 at number 9. Expect this to continue going up, it's going to be absolutely big. And Over You by Nathan Dorr and Cheyenne actually managed to hit the top 10 too at number 10. If you told me that this was Nathan Dorr's big Dance Airplay crossover after Heart Still Beating, I would have called you crazy. This is doing a lot better than I expected. But on to our falls and fall-offs, and thankfully the only big one that actually matters is Let's Ride Away by Avicii featuring featuring El King finally exiting, which considering that it's a mediocre posthumous cash grab that I don't really have any nice things to say about in terms of its release, and I really hope that this is the last we get of the Avicii posthumous tracks. This is getting ridiculous now. Yeah, this going away is not a bad thing by any means. Also, Best Day of My Life by BUNT featuring Tom Adele underperformed, as I said previously, and considering that his collaboration with Miles Lloyd Crazy is actually getting the push instead, this doesn't really surprise me. Shame the song actually grew on me. I wouldn't have minded if this actually stuck around, but unfortunately that's not going to happen at this point. But more interestingly, we didn't really see many big falls at all this week. There were not really a lot of songs that actually saw some considerable losses. I mean, you had some big surprises like Illegal by Pink Panther as a 28 and Blackberries by Fisher and Baby Close, unfortunately already stalling out at 28, alongside some natural exits like Dancing in My Room by Belle Tatum at 43 as a cheap sounding no-namer with absolutely nothing behind her, and again, this doesn't surprise me. Same deal with The Party by Alyssa Ragu down to 47, even if she has the American Idol connection, this was not going to stick around. And a long overdue normal fall for Won't Be Possible by Tiesto, Odd Mob and Good Boys to 11. Again, this is not going to stick around much longer considering that it's actually finally seeing falls at a pretty normal rate. It really took it long enough. This is probably going to end up being the #1 song on the year-end list this year, which is insane to me, and I'm not about to complain, but still, it's about time for this to go away. It had a really good run. And thankfully, another thing that benefits this chart is the fact that it sometimes actually has comebacks that are worth noting, although in this case they were just bizarre here. I mean, we had Positions by Strive Malachi and Adam Portback at 46, so a relatively solid Afro house song with some actual legit groove. I might like this even more than Move, and of course it's underperformed because Kind Music can't really push anything nowadays. And for some ungodly reason, Twilight Zone by Ariana Grande is back at 50. Again, why the hell is this continuing to get dance airplay support? It's already collapsed on pop airplay, and there's no real support there anymore for it. Are there remixes giving this traffic? Because this sticking around does not make any sense at all to me. But then that just leaves out jumps, where a lot of the songs that actually saw positive movements and increased in spins saw considerable jumps here. I mean, why else would Slide Away by Audien and Mac J featuring Julia Church thankfully jump up to 18? Or Tesla by Mal P at 24? Or the surprising rebound of Start a Fire by Above and Beyond featuring Richard Bedford at 25. Great to see this back here again. Hell, there's also 3am by Lazewo at 32. A relatively solid follow-up that actually proves that these guys are a lot better than Messi would have you believe. And the unsurprising surge for Make Me Feel by Oscar Medcamp to 33. It's a smash hit already, and considering that the Khalid remix will probably give it a little bit more radio appeal, I expect this to jump up even higher. Not gonna complain. But the one exception there is Jump by Blackpink up to 42, which actually lost spins this week, but probably because it was more consistently stable than a lot of songs around it, it actually jumped up considerably. I don't expect it to last though, and that's a shame. I do like the track, and it does actually fit this format a lot better than you'd think. But what I do expect will last will come in our debuts, all 2 of them on Mediabase this week, and one of which I've already covered this week with Ocean by Calvin Harris and Jessie Reyez already debuting early at 35. It's going to be an absolutely massive hit. It's already on track to debut really high on Billboard's charts as well. Yeah, I'm not about to complain about this sticking around and making a late run. It is a fantastic track, really welcome there. But that leaves one debut that honestly should be a lot less surprising than it actually is, being, and finally, number 41, Hazy by VASSY.
So how we're going through the roof. Get hazy.
Okay, it does surprise me that this is the first time that I've actually covered VASSY in this series, considering how much he thoroughly dominated the club scene in the 2010s, with both Bad with David Guetta and Showtek and Secrets with Tiesto and Kashmir being the sort of massive mainstream hits. That doesn't remotely surprise me why she stuck around as long as she has. But really, considering that she was only crossing over after those tracks thanks to club play support, it shouldn't be surprising that it's taken this long for me to actually talk about her, and considering that this is a track that was released in June and has under 15,000 streams. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot out of this, and yeah, unfortunately this doesn't really work for me. It feels really atonal and ugly in the synth production especially. We have these farty synths against the ambient pads that just do not complement each other at all, with this really dour and miserable vibe that doesn't really sound all that good, especially when VASSY's best strength in her belting is just not emphasized here at all. Her vocals sound really flat and tuned out, which is not a good thing for her. She doesn't really have the great sort of low range to really work for this sort of track. I mean, I get that this mix is meant to symbolize the hazy state that she's in. I get why it sounds like this, but with a mix this dour and this unpleasant, I really get why this didn't perform well on streaming at all. This is so goddamn weak, especially when it's clear that VASSY's strengths in assertiveness and vocal presence are just not here at all. Well, she does not sound like she's in this whatsoever. So yeah, not the worst thing she's charted, but yeah, this was pretty disappointing. I expected better here. And that's the week. Honestly, a pretty damn solid one, to the point where the worst and the best really fell out pretty damn easily. For the best, it's easily going to Ocean by Calvin Harris and Jessie, Reyez, with honourable runner-up to Spaces by BUNT, the Chainsmokers, and Izzy, Bizu. I'm shocked I'm even saying that. And for worst, I mean, obviously it's going to Montagem Supersonic by KHAOS and Jmilton. That song is hot trash, and Sonic really deserved better than this. With Dishonourable runner-up going to Hazy by VASSY. Again, it's not exactly awful, but it's not exactly the sort of track I want to come back to either. I would understand why this would underperform if it actually does. Next week though, okay, John Summit and especially Elenium are both likely to debut really goddamn high in the top 10 on Hot Dance, with Demi Lovato probably likely to cross over to Dance Pop 2 and actually give that chart something interesting to talk about. Even if the song is not exactly something I'm interested in myself, I'm at least curious if it actually turns out okay. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.